Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today's video is actually sponsored by EA, but one that I'm really excited to break into. We're going to discuss how you improve your aim utilizing strictly the test range. So if you're on console, we're going to talk about some exercises, why they're helpful, and let's just break it down. Now, let us begin with exercise number 1. What I'm going to recommend here is utilizing a close range weapon, but of course getting acquainted with all of your loadouts in Apex Legends. What we're going to utilize here is going to be an R99, and we're just going to kind of keep it stock for now. What I recommend doing, especially for those that feel very uncomfortable with the game and close range encounters, is literally standing right in front of the target dummies that you see here. Now what you can do is you go into customize range. I recommend highly turning on infinite weapon reloads. That's number 1. Leaving dynamic stats on isn't bad, so you kind of know where you stand. You can turn down the audio, play some music in the background. So I'm turning this down because otherwise it's going to be a little loud, and just so you can hear me still. But it's always nice to kind of just get into that flow and that rhythm, right? That's very important. That's another tip there. As well as you can change the shields. I recommend changing this to Mythic all the way up. I turn off crouching for now just to get into a flow of hitting a target. One of my biggest tips, especially in this exercise, is very, very beginner and very basic. And as we keep going, I promise you we're going to get a lot more advanced, is that what you want to do is you're going to realize how little, especially whenever you're doing a mirror, is you have to move your mouse or controller. This is what we call a mirror strafe. Realistically, if you're tracking them, you have to move your cursor very little. What happens with most players, and what I used to do as well a lot, you'll notice that you'll start to waver or jitter, you're thinking that you have to move your mouse a lot more than you need to. At this close range, recoil isn't very intrusive or very bad. The only thing you have to worry about is whenever you move a little bit up and down from different terrain, which is really good practice. And as you keep tracking, moving left and right. I would say a minute they spawn, just keep the track on them. And of course, if you need to, just melee at the very end of it and don't miss it like me. And just keep reloading and practicing this. You could do that with various loadouts. It's very, very helpful. And this is probably your basic introduction to making sure you understand mirroring, how to track, how to move back and forth. The idea as well is that you break up this exercise and you don't necessarily have to always mirror. You can move a little bit left and right and practice your track and utilize different sights as well. All of that's definitely very, very helpful in this exercise. What you're trying to practice here is getting rid of the jitters or freak out session that you may have whenever you're trying to track an opponent. Especially whenever you're tracking their strafe, mirroring it, and moving around. Like I said, the biggest takeaway from this, move your crosshairs less, because you may mirror their strafe, and then focus strictly on whenever the target moves left and right, and once they spawn, start blasting away. That's my biggest tip there. Use this with any weapon that you deem appropriate to help you out here. Exercise number 2, the wingman exercise. In the background, I was actually chilling in the test range last night when I recorded this. Hit the target in the center as it moves and bounce back and forth between targets. Your goal is to get into a flow and rhythm as you shoot between targets. You focus more on accuracy and flow rather than speed and headshots, if you can. But you can replace this with a lot of different loadouts, specifically with the Peacekeeper and Shotgun to get used to the overall close range pressure. Again, this is another exercise. You're on console, PC. Don't worry about speed, focus on that flow, and make sure that you're hitting headshots. So what we have here is a classic exercise, one that I've shared on the channel before, but I don't think I've actually made a video on. So you want to go to customize range, and you want to adjust this in the back. You could do crouch walk, run, zip line, anything that can throw you off. Zip line is definitely a lot harder because of the movement speed, so if you want, you can slow it down. In this example, we're going to slow it down just a little bit. So we'll do a walk. You can hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And I doubled up. So the goal of this exercise, as you saw that I doubled up there, is to hit 21 targets. So if you put a level 1 mag on your Volt SMG with your favorite sight, and you focus on hitting each of these targets and not double up on it, your goal when you're on controller, or if you are using a mouse, is to hit each of these targets but not over pressure on the mouse. If you hold it even for like an extra second, you'll shoot an extra bullet. In this exercise, what your goal is to do is to create speed. I wish I was much faster at this. One thing that I always tend to lack and what I need to practice more on is speed versus precision. As I continue to speed up, my precision will drop. As you notice, I doubled up on a bullet somewhere. And this is one of those exercises I need to spend a lot more time on, specifically in the range. That'll help you a lot. Even if you do it on roller, PC, I've seen a lot of people on controller master this and gain a lot of speed and precision and confidence as they're moving through this. If you are aware of voltaic aim training, a lot of static targets really come with practicing hitting this and creating a flow. So what you can essentially have is a bit of dynamic clicking plus a little flow here. So if you want to make it a lot more difficult, like we had mentioned just a second ago, you go to customize range, change that speed over to zip line so you have something else to flick to as you're going through. Just a really good exercise, one that is very slept on, and I feel can definitely help you improve your aim as you're shooting between targets, especially if you want to introduce the ones in the back. You can put yourself a gold mag and introduce those as well into the mix. Alright, now that we focus on some of the close range exercises, one of the biggest things that I feel like a lot of players end up making the mistake of doing is not focusing on the long range and mid range encounters. So one thing you want to do, and you can change this with an R301, a flatline, a sniper, is you want to focus on your tracking and even hitting these targets at a distance. So standing further back in the range and try to hit as many bullets on these opponents as possible is really, really helpful. This is a really good spot to give yourself practice with, like a, let's say, a head glitch. And over time you'll improve. I recommend not putting a barrel, just to practice without a barrel on it. But even then you'll realize how little, as you keep doing it, you actually have to move your crosshair. The biggest issue that most individuals see, and I'm going to go and shoot this for you, you'll notice that there's recoil, but when you're moving around that much, and you just pull down even just a little bit, how actually the recoil, I mean how realistic it is that it's not as daunting as it feels. The biggest thing is you want to keep a constant line of, I guess you can call it pressure if you're holding your controller or mouse, where you're not too loose but also not too tense. If you're too tense, you'll lose your flow. You'll feel a little too jittery, essentially, and I guess you can use that for like jitter aim. But if you're too tense, then your aim becomes a lot more rigid. You want to find a nice balance and flow between the two to create that comfort. Now let's go and bleed this into the next exercise. What I recommend doing, especially since you have unlimited ammo, which is a lot easier to do, is you can hit the targets all the way from the back over here. If you want, you can track them as you're hitting this. In this scenario, what I like to practice is just simple recoil control and hitting these targets from a distance. You'll notice that I do this a lot whenever I'm warming up in the morning when I'm trying to stream, trying to get those shots in. 241 is not bad, especially when you're trying to do this live, and really focus on that recoil control. And the biggest tips I can provide is always memorize the start of the recoil pattern. So if you don't know the recoil pattern of your specific weapon, shoot just a little bit and you notice that this pulls up and then to the right. So how do I counter that? Pull down and then to the left. And then the rest of the recoil pattern you can continue to memorize and practice, but this is the way you really do it. Now, if you can hit these type of shots at range, it'll make you a lot more effective and a lot more dangerous at various encounters. As you rank up, you'll notice that most of your encounters are no longer close range. They matter more on getting that entry damage at mid to long range. So pressure yourself. Really test yourself. You can even hit the targets all the way back here and really practice your aim and try to work it that way. There's even further targets all the way back here if you need to snipe. Most people are not aware of these targets that exist. You get used to a little bullet drop, a little bit of spray control, not going to be perfect, but even hitting, let's say 44 to even the body is helpful, even at range. And the reason why is that, let's go ahead and grab yourself a sniper. If you grab yourself a longbow, and it's something that you craft, and even if you take a quick shot, that's not a longbow, there we go, and we take a shot here, 55. If you shoot somebody from a distance, even for just a little bit, then you know you got an equal amount of damage. So practice mode has head glitches, increase the range dramatically as you're trying to improve and practice your aim. And do it with a lot of different weapons. Don't be shy about trying to shoot something from a mile away as you're trying to hit your shots and getting used to that. Once you find that distance, you'll hit it over and over and over again, even if you're using irons. Practice that. It's always the same distance as you're shooting. But each of these sights has a different bit of a, especially irons, has a bit of a different flow, but once you memorize it, you don't even have to think about it as you're shooting targets. Even the ones that are further away. Let's see if we can hit that from all over here. There you go, first shot. And that's because I know the bullet velocity of these guns, but you have to understand the bullet velocity and also the drop, just so you know where it's going to land. So specifically more the drop of each of these loadouts. So let's go on to the next exercise. Another thing people tend to forget, and I'm using this height as a more dramatic example, you can use this height, or even if you want to be very dramatic and use that, is to shoot down your targets from above. A lot of people tend to forget shooting down below at a target and how awkward that movement feels as you're trying to shoot. Don't let it be the first time that you're in a battle royale game where you're trying to hit somebody from a distance here. Always try to be a little bit more creative and think of these scenarios that you may not put yourself in while you're in game. Because these are the scenarios when you're shooting at a distance that you actually may find yourself in. And because of that, try to get height, try to take different angles. Here, like I said, here, you can get up there. Use a different legend in the test range to get yourself to that position, to shoot from down below to hit some of those targets. Let's wrap up and cover some of these scenarios that actually exist here that actually are still pretty good to this day. Now, there's things you can learn from them. They're not perfect. Like this scenario isn't necessarily perfect, and the reason why I don't think it's the best is because you can't see what target you're looking at next. So you don't necessarily know what to flick for. And so it's kind of an element of surprise and then hitting as many headshots as you can. So this is a good scenario for practicing keeping your crosshair steady and not freaking out about, I guess, recoil control. Now, the most popular one, the one that I've gotten here on the channel, which is 140 with a scout, is utilizing this. Hitting these targets. Remember how we were using them before for hitting various targets? This is a great exercise to help you get used to that more broad movement. So I highly recommend using this one to get used to that movement as you're flicking between targets. It's a lot of fun and pretty easy to do. I think another one that you could utilize here that is not bad, but people tend to forget it exists in the range, is also the bow check. When you grab the bow check, sometimes it could feel a little weird, especially when it bounces back and forth, but it's definitely great for aim training and hitting that target as it moves left and right. And just trying to get as many headshots as possible and just keep shooting. Especially because the bow check has some of the highest damage as well in the game, which is why it's still in the care package. So definitely a good loadout to test and try. And of course you can create your own custom ones. And how you do that is by simply adjusting these same movements that you see here within the customize range tab. So if you want to change it to run and then practice your Kraber shots, add some distance into that, and then try to get yourself a headshot and shoot at them from various distances and back up, move forward, back up, move forward. And the only way to get used to that more and more is by practicing and hitting them here and just shooting over and over and over and over again until you master it. Now, as we wrap up, my biggest tips that I can provide to anybody as well is, and I'll give you guys an extra exercise that I used to do when it comes to target switching, and we'll add that as a bonus, is what you're trying to work on here as you step away from the range is confidence. If you feel like there's any loadout that you don't feel confident with that you may land on, you need to come in the range and practice with it. One of mine would be the EVA 8, so I would just need to keep blasting away with the EVA 8 at close range and then figure out the distance in which the gun no longer feels effective. So if you notice you start hitting for 7s, you need to feel out that distance again and keep backing up until the gun is no longer effective. And you ask yourself, why am I shooting at this distance and range? So any gun, mark it down in your brain, a piece of paper, whenever you're VOD reviewing. You say, I landed on that. I don't like it. It doesn't feel comfortable. Go in the range and start shooting with it. You never know if it might be a loadout that you may have to run to save resources with your team, to help improve some weapon variety, something at launch, at drop, that to make you feel more confident. That's your goal here. And close at distance if you need to. Get up and close if it makes you feel, spike up the anxiety and get used to it. With hip fire, with ADS, anything you need to. And if this feels too comfortable, then you need to switch to long range and start blasting from far away. Now, the last exercise that I like to kind of talk about here is one that I did with Watson a little while back. I haven't really talked about it in a while, but I'm going to go ahead and put in this one just so this feels like all-encompassing. What you need to do is grab yourself a Spitfire, and what you do is you put fences in a different spot. So say I put a fence here, I put Gen right here, you sit on top of it. What we're going to do is practice target switching between hitting various pulls on the ground. Now, the beauty of this exercise is that you're hitting something and at least it gives you some feedback to register what you're shooting. So if you're trying to hit target switch between it, you wait for a few bullets to hit between them. This is a fun little exercise to do. You can hold down ADS the whole time or the bullets and just keep shooting between them, but it's a good way to kind of build some of that target switching. So there's things that we've covered for today. Is the target switching between targets. You can create your own custom ones and move it around here in this plane, which kind of feels a little more like an aim trainer. You just got to make sure you have Watson unlocked for. Well, I guess at this point, I mean, anybody can use Watson. I forgot about that. A little while since I thought about that. But nonetheless, we talked about tracking at close range, increasing that tracking at long range, hitting really small targets at a distance, target switching, adding some dynamic clicking in by hitting the various targets, bouncing back and forth between them. We've used some of the static target clicking with a G7 Scout, static target with some dynamic clicking involved by hitting these targets, bouncing back and forth. So there's a lot that you can still use in this test range. Just got to be a little creative and think a little outside the box. Hopefully this inspires you guys in the comment section down below to utilize the test range and kind of kick it up a notch. Even though, yes, I would always ask for more. I would love for targets to jump pad over me, to move around and be a little bit more fun, but at the same time, at least we have a strong, solid base here, and I wanted to make this video to help somebody out there improve. So thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.